Hello, lovelies. If you are in the mood for something sweet and fruity, then today you have come to the right place because I am sharing an amazing recipe for these raspberry oat crumble bars that taste just as good as they sound. I absolutely love these because they can be enjoyed for breakfast, as a snack, or even as dessert, topped with a little bit of vanilla ice cream would be so super good. Now for this recipe, we are going to be using a combination of oats and some oat flour, since I know a lot of us are having trouble finding all-purpose flour at our local supermarkets. Now, you can purchase oat flour at the supermarket, but you won't believe how easy it is to make yourself. I have got some quick cooking oats here. I recommend using quick cooking oats as opposed to old-fashioned rolled oats in this recipe. They just tend to cook up a little nicer. You can use old-fashioned oats if that's what you have, but quick cooking oats are my preference. I'm just going to get half of those oats into the blender. And you can do this with a food processor as well, but basically all you want to do is just give it a quick whirl until they're nice and smooth. It honestly only takes about a minute or so in the blender before you have this really gorgeous fine oat flour. Oat flour can actually be used in all kinds of different recipes to replace traditional all-purpose flour. So if you're having trouble finding some, it could be a really welcome alternative. Once we've got our oat flour in our bowl, to that we are going to add some of our quick cooking oats. I like using both the oat flour and the oats themselves because you get a really nice texture that way. I'm also going to be adding some sweetener to this. So the sweetener I'm using today is actually some brown sugar. You could use some traditional white sugar in this recipe or even some coconut sugar if you wanted to. You definitely have a lot of great options. To that, I'm going to add a little bit of baking powder as well as just a touch of salt. And I just want to mix this together until it's really well combined. At this point, it is time to add our wet ingredients to this, or more accurately, our wet ingredient to this. I am actually just going to be using some melted butter in this recipe. Now you could swap in some melted coconut oil instead if you want to keep this dairy-free, but I wanted it to be a little richer, so I'm going to be adding some melted butter. I'm just going to mix this together until it's really well incorporated, and then I can get to work on creating the base for these amazing oat crumble bars. For this recipe, I'm using a baking dish that's approximately 8 by 8 inches. And what you'll notice is that I've created these little parchment paper wings, for lack of a better word. Basically, the reason I do this is so that once our oat bars are baked, it's really easy to sort of lift them out of the dish. Otherwise, you'll try to cut them out and you could have them fall apart on you, and that is not what we are going for. We want to make sure that they are nice and uniform and easy to lift out, and this parchment paper really, really helps with that. Now at this point, all we're going to do is transfer about 2/3 of our oat mixture into the bottom of our dish. We want to reserve the last third because we're going to be crumbling it on top of our raspberries. Now all I'm going to do is get in here with my hands and press this into my plate. You really want to pack it in here. This is very similar to what you would do with like a graham cracker crust in a cheesecake, for example. You want to make sure that you get it all the way out to the sides and really press it down. If you find it's a little on the dry side, don't hesitate to add just a little more melted butter. We want to make sure this all sticks together. Now that we've got our oat base prepared, it is time to mix up our raspberry filling. And to do that, I am going to be simmering our raspberry sauce in a saucepan on the stove. I've got it over medium heat. You don't want it any higher than that, otherwise you can burn it. And I've got these gorgeous raspberries. I'm actually doing this with raspberries because I had some left over from a shoot I did last week. But if you wanted to do this with blueberries or strawberries, you definitely could. You could do this with peaches or plums. It's really just about what you have on hand and what's in season where you are. Once you've got your raspberries in the pan, you're gonna go ahead and add a little bit of sugar to this. You could use honey if you wanted to, or even some brown sugar or coconut sugar. I'm using regular granulated sugar here because I find you get a really nice texture with it. I'm also going to be adding a little bit of cornstarch. So the cornstarch is going to help make sure this mixture is nice and thick and delicious. And just for a touch more flavor, I'm going to be adding a little splash of vanilla. You might not know this, but vanilla and raspberries were just a match made in heaven in terms of flavor. Finally, I'm going to be adding just a nice squeeze of lemon juice to this. So I've got the juice of about half a lemon headed in here, and I'm just going to squeeze it in using my citrus press. And as soon as we've got our lemon in here, that's pretty much it. We just want to let this cook away For between, say, 6 to 8 minutes, you're going to see those raspberries burst and release all of their amazing juices. And then this is going to start to thicken up and become really jammy and delicious. As soon as that happens, we can turn our heat off and transfer this mixture right into our baking dish on top of our oat base. We're just going to use our spoon to smooth it out into a nice even layer. And then the final step is going to be adding our remaining oat mixture and crumbling it all over the top of our delicious oat bars. As you can see, this is going to be layer upon layer upon layer of yumminess. Am I right? So I've got my oven preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm just going to get this baking dish into the oven for between 25 and 30 minutes. You wanna make sure you let these cook until they are completely set and just become a little golden on top. When these come out of the oven, guys, they smell absolutely incredible. But it is super important that we exercise a little bit of restraint because we have to let these cool completely before cutting them into squares. In fact, I would recommend letting them cool at room temperature for about 30 minutes and then putting them in the refrigerator for another 30 minutes so that when you cut into them, they are nice and solid and stay in their perfect square shape. Otherwise, if you cut them too early, they'll just fall apart and crumble, and that's not exactly what we're going for. And now, lovelies, it is the moment of truth. Time to see if all of our hard work paid off. It's looking amazing. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. What should we do? 9 squares? I think that looks about right. All right, we're gonna cut right in. It's coming apart so perfectly. Look at that, guys. It's got the perfect base, such a gooey filling. Oh my gosh, so good. Your patience will absolutely be rewarded because what you're going to end up with are these delectable, completely delicious raspberry oat crumble bars that you will not be able to get enough of. Trust me on this one. I have not been able to say no since they came out of the oven. Guys, I really hope you love this recipe as much as I do and that you will give it a try for yourselves in your very own kitchens. If you do, be sure to tweet me, Instagram me, or Facebook me a photo because you know how much I love seeing your kitchen creations. Remember, the full recipe is linked in the description box below, so you can find it there with all of the full measurements. And finally, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe because there is lots more deliciousness where this came from.